The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The affairs, the beliefs, the principles, the Oklahoma opinions and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. And here we are again with me, the verbal Viking, perspicuous plunder of conversation. 3D Politics every Monday night right here as best we can on Facebook Live, battling last week the big media tech giants out there. That's right, we battled them and we're battling back this week, but more exciting than that, we have a fundraiser I want to tell you all about tonight. Frank Urbanek is running for mayor in Oklahoma City. And I want to bring you some information about that. Don't forget, next month, 3D Culture, right here on 3D Politics. We're going to do arts, music, and entertainment. Send me your information if you're interested in bringing us your music, arts, or entertainment. Send that information to verbalviking@gmail.com. We'll see if we can't feature you on the air. We've already got I've got a tentative agreement with DJC Connections owner Jason Bailey and music aficionado to talk about the different culture. He's been running that for 15 years there, and he can talk a little bit about the different requests in music at weddings, etc. And we also have I've also invited Michael Rapp. We've got I've got an invite to Matthew Hill, who was recently written up in the Cherokee newspaper, the Phoenix. And so we are reaching out to all the regional artists, musicians, etc. And so also now I want to share my website with you, as I am also one of those people. Let's see if we can find what I'm looking for here. And of course not. Let's see if we can get to where we want to go by going here and here. And then let's go to right here. And that is not going to work. Tonight, maybe at the break I can bring it in here. Let's hold tight here for just a second and see. That is not what I about a fundraiser that I am working out with for Frank Urbanek. And there it is. Now, let's see if I can come back here and share the screen. This is the Verbal Viking website. And as you can see here right at the top, Funds for Frank right here. Let's make sure we're going live. Okay, and it starts on January 10th, and it's going to be an auction. Prepare to join the auction. All proceeds will go to Lieutenant Colonel Frank Urbanek, candidate for Oklahoma City mayor, continuing to defend Oklahoma City businesses and citizens from tyrannical government overreach. So right here on the Verbal Viking site, you can see I've got my little blog, capitalism, talking about pretense of minimum wage. Dr. Gist speaks with slurred science. Oh my gosh. Capitalism is like a uterus. That's a good one. And so also a little bit of stuff about GemWorks photos. I do jewelry, some pictures of jewelry there. Also OPG videos. Let's see what that is. Oh, yeah, that's the New Normal. That's a song parody, another song parody there. A little bit of comedy there in the OPG area. Flying Monkeys is where I do some, you can find me on SoundCloud right there. Tommy McKay on SoundCloud. 35 Years Beyond the Moon is a song I do. 3D Politics takes you to all the stuff 3D Politics. But without further ado, let's talk about Funds for Frank. So go to verbalviking.com. At the top of the page, you'll see the Funds for Frank link. Click on that, and here it is, Friday, 7 Friday, January 7th, 2022 at 7:55 p.m. We're going to start it. And January 17th, 2022 at 7:55 p.m. we're going to end it. And we're going to end it with Frank Urbanic on the show. So we'll find out how many people and how much money we raise. So right here, you can click on the event there I just showed you above. And that's the Funds for Frank event page. It starts all on January 10th. We're going to finalize it. It's going to be a 10-day auction on eBay. So we'll show you where to find that. And you can find some different stuff there right here. Frank Urbanic, and you can see his Facebook page right there. And all this stuff is accessible. You can find that information about the Funds for Frank. Now, let's go to the description of the item we're going to be auctioning. So we're auctioning this item that I have cast and finished myself. It's called the Sterling Silver Cold Dead Fingers Collection. It's an ode to the Second Amendment. It's a Second Amendment charm rifle, if you can call that a rifle a charm. But it's sterling silver. It's custom cast, made in the USA. It's a cold dead sterling silver hand grips, a Western cowboy style rifle. It's approximately 11 grams total, both pieces. The little hand actually literally grabs the rifle. It's not soldered on. Here's a picture of it there hanging. And it is about the rifle itself is about 2 3/4 inches long. It hangs on an 18-inch, 1.5 millimeter black leather cord with a lobster clasp. So there it is, Frank Urbanic's. It's Funds for Frank at the eBay auction is going to start on January 7th, and we are going to tell you all about that as it comes up. Now, tonight, I told you we're battling last week, due to unreasonable censorship by YouTube, they ripped down our last show with Hannah Silk previously on the Young and Republicans. So tonight's episode is previously again on the Young and the Republicans. I have removed those offensive truths that are disallowed by the corporate fiat on Facebook. And so we are going to replay this Hannah Silk interview minus those important truths to see if it will fly past the AI matrix and to see if you people who watched last week can figure out where the hard edit is. So let's see now if I can start our show. Don't forget to go to verbalviking.com, check out the Funds for Frank auction so that you can preview that Cold Dead Fingers piece. We're going to be starting that auction on January 7th, and it'll finish up on January 17th with Frank Urbanic right here on 3D Politics. Now, let's see if this is going to work for us here. There's that, and we will go full and see if this is going to work. The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. With me, the Verbal Viking, every Monday night right here. Tommy McKay, the perspicuous plunder of conversation. Find me at Tommy McKay on Facebook, at Tommy McKay on Twitter, and of course you can email me at verbalviking@gmail.com. Tonight we have a lot to talk about. I want to first thank Daniel Navejas from last week. We talked all about the GOP platform concerning abortion, etc. I learned a lot about his position there, and we want to thank Daniel Navejas for coming out last week and speaking to us. Also, next week, I'm working on a fundraiser for Frank Urbanic, Oklahoma City mayoral candidate. And I have a piece of jewelry that is called the Cold Dead Fingers Collection. You can check it out on eBay. We're going to be working on an auction style presentation to benefit Frank Urbanek, Oklahoma City mayoral candidate, coming up next week. And next month also, on January 3rd, that is 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to do a best of, see what we can cobble together from the last year, all the exciting stuff we've done last year, to see if we can get an eclectic put together show there. Surprise next week. You don't know what's coming next week. But also, don't forget Frank Urbanek fundraiser next week coming. But tonight, episode entitled Previously on the Young and the Republicans. Hannah Silk, Admonishment from the Heart. Former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair Hannah Silk has called for the resignation of current OKGOP State Vice-Chair with concerns of denied representation due to a recent power struggle. The December 2nd this year OKYR leadership meeting. Silk is calling on the federal delegation and Governor Kevin Stitt to disavow the treatment of these young Republicans in Tulsa. Tonight, we're going to talk about a thing that has become known as the parking lot convention. In 2019, it somehow ties, we'll learn how tonight, to the December 2nd, 2021 dramatic leadership showdown. There's a question about who is appointed and who is. How is the difference, and what does that say? Also, the OKGOP OKGOP State Vice-Chair Shane Jemison. And we're going to talk about him, and also hostile takeover or jurisdictional authority. I think that's one of the questions. So, without further ado, let's see if we can reach Hannah Silk, see if we can hear her. Can you hear her?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hannah, she's there. That's right. We've got her coming in. Let's see if we can beam her in, and we'll see if we can actually see her. Beam her in from the planet's surface there. Wow, look at that. Just like a champ in there. Just gets better every week, doesn't it? Okay, Hannah. It's what makes the show different. So
I love
Hannah,
it.
it's nice of you to say. Okay, Hannah Silk, you were the former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair, and I appreciate you being here tonight. Tell us, I kind of want to go in chronological order. Do it any way you want, but let's start with this. Before I'm already rushing in. Let's talk about how you got started, because I skipped your bio on the way in. It also tells me here, Hannah Silk is currently the administrative assistant, communications director, and staff writer for Ekklesia of Oklahoma. Silk was regional director for Dan Fisher's gubernatorial campaign in 2018, also facilitated her older brother's campaign efforts, Joseph Silk, when he ran for state senate in 2015. So how did you get into politics at such an early age?
It's a fun story. I really enjoy telling it. So Joseph Silk, my older brother, ran for office. I was about 15, and I was homeschooled, so all the free time in the world. So he just used me as his personal campaign junkie. Knocked doors with him every week. Did all the help design mailers and all the fun stuff. So it was a great learning experience.
Right.
And then once he got elected, which he should not have got elected, he was the first Republican to be elected to the Senate from that district since statehood. It's
Wow.
still a pretty heavily Democratic district down there, which is really interesting. Now they're all like conservative Democrats, but it was a really interesting campaign, really interesting race. Kind of shook things up in the Capitol.
Let me just say, because you threw me and my audience, they just right with me all the time. When you say he shouldn't have won, what you mean is he won against great odds.
He did. He
Okay.
was a 27-year-old kid who'd only lived in the county for like, I think 4 years at the time.
Wow.
So he wasn't well known, running against an incumbent who had lived there his whole life. His grandpa lived there. Everybody knew him. Everybody was related to him. So yes, he won against great odds. And it was pretty cool to get to be a part of that. So I was a part of 2 of his campaigns. He ran twice. And none of it, my family had never been super involved in politics. We were just your typical Christian family, watched Fox News, voted for the president, kind of stayed up to date, but just your basic Baptist Southern family. And whenever election time came around, there wasn't a Republican running. It was just the Democratic candidate. And my brother Joseph, me and him and my dad, my mom had a conversation in the kitchen. And he said, Dad, like, the people have to have a choice at least. Like, I'm not saying one of us is going to win, but we have to at least give them a choice. So either you're running or I'm running. And Dad was like, I'm not running, but I will support you in whatever way I can. And so he ran, he won. And then if you listen to Daniel Navejas's podcast with you last week, pretty quickly, abortion has always been a really big issue, obviously, to my family. And he was really passionate about that, really wanted to see change in Oklahoma regarding that. So he authored a heartbeat bill, and leadership told him, well, you need to tighten up the language on this bill, and you need to come up with some sort of punishment because it's kind of vague and it doesn't really do much. So he was like, okay, that's fair. And so in the 2-week time period that he had to change the language, he ended up making it an abolition bill. So switching it from a heartbeat bill to life is life from conception. And if you take that life after that point, then it's murder and we're going to treat it like a homicide. And then the whole thing with the pro-life establishment coming out against that bill happened. And so ever since then, my family to the world of politics, to the fight that is there. And once your eyes are open to the truth, you can't really go back. We couldn't really go back to our cozy little lives.
You were pulled into the vortex. And I've noticed another thing. I mean, there are some people who are involved in politics, not because they're wonky and they just love it, live it, and breathe it, but they have the ability to consume it, understand it, and explain it, and then they find themselves doing it because they have the ability to do it. So, but clearly you got caught into the vortex of a family that's on the cultural edge. So that tells us how you got started. So now I really have a lot of questions. Tell the audience about where to find your video, because that's what we're going to talk about tonight. You released a video that talks about the setup that I gave tonight. So tell them where to find that video, and then we're going to discuss what's in the video.
Sure. If you go to my Facebook page, Hannah Silk, I should be pretty easy to find. There's not a whole lot of Silks in the world. Hannah Silk, or if you go to the Ekklesia of Oklahoma Facebook page, and that's EKKLESIA, Ekklesia. It's posted on both of those Facebook pages. And it's kind of just a brief overview of the things that have happened over the past 2 years, which we'll go into more depth here. But those are the 2 places you can find those easiest right now.
So for me,
Facebook.
I'm just going to tell them where I saw it was Hannah Silk on Facebook. And that's going to give you pretty quickly, you scroll down and there's 2 or 3 videos that you've presented there. And so that's where to find it. Hannah Silk, former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair. So the way I understood the very beginning of the video, it sounded like you were almost pulled back in from former due to concerns over this December 2nd dramatic leadership showdown. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. There have been rumblings of the Young Republicans, people concerned with individuals connected to the Young Republicans, and it becoming another rung in the political ladder for establishment politicians to start to make their way into office. And so those were kind of the rumblings that I was hearing. And then the December 2nd thing really just finalized some concerns that I was having. because I hadn't taken much action after our charter was all of that, which we'll go into. I hadn't taken much action just because I didn't know what exactly should happen, what I should be doing. And so it was just a lot of thinking and kind of processing and talking to people and figuring out what the best thing to do was going to be. And then I was kind of forced into like, well, I guess I better do something and, do something fast. So
I think I'm trying to bridge the gap in my mind of how did you go from former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair to suddenly now making these issues and what I are making these, making these calling for the resignation, et cetera. And how what I understand was people called you and said, hey, we got a problem. And that was on December 2nd issue, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's what happened.
All right. So we're going to explain the December 2nd thing, but tell me quickly about what happened. I remember seeing the video of the parking lot convention. I don't know what happened. I didn't, again, I don't live and breathe this stuff, but I do remember that issue. So what was the 2019? Why were you guys somebody was kicked out of something. You ended up having to have your meeting in the parking lot. What was that and why was that? And then ultimately, how is that connected to the December 2nd thing?
Sure. So 2019, in September of 2019, I got a couple phone calls from some different individuals asking me to run for vice chair of the YRs. And they were saying that at the convention, there was going to be a slate of establishment candidates that were going to be up for office, but it was just all establishment, all rhinos. And we were like, hey, if we can take over the YRs and use it as a useful tool to actually educate people on conservative principles, then we need to do it because it could be a phenomenal tool and get people, young people involved. And so they had contacted me. We rounded up a bunch of young people and got them to the convention with our candidates, which is what a convention is all about. These are your options and everybody gets to decide on who you want to vote on. And so we showed up and it very quickly became apparent that they did not expect us to be there. They didn't really want us there. And they were doing everything they could to really keep us from even being able to vote. So they were trying to not let at-large members' votes count. So if you're an at-large member, it means you're not a part of a county club. And a lot of us weren't a part of county clubs because there weren't that many county clubs in the YRs.
Okay. Let me just, in fact, I have to clarify. Are we talking about that sounds like the 2021. Is that 2019?
No, this is 19. This is a 19.
This sounds like, so this is what you're saying. History on the video, you say history repeats itself. What you are describing exactly what happened on December 2nd. Basically, what you're saying, it also happened in 2019. You're listening to Hannah Silk, Admonishment from the Heart, speaking about the Young Republicans 2019 parking lot convention and more about the December 2nd, 2021 dramatic leadership showdown. So essentially, literally that's why I stopped you. Was same exact thing happened. You went down in 2019 with a group of people and you were not allowed to participate. And so that's how'd you wind up in the parking lot?
Yeah, so they were letting guests vote, but they weren't letting our at-large members vote. The chairman who was officiating the meeting was like disregarding people's calls for a point of order or a point of information. It was insane. They were just, which we had the majority. And so we were able to take control of the situation and outvote what was happening. And then, so they ended up, once they realized that they had lost control, they ended up just shutting the meeting down without voting on anything, without electing any officers. But they didn't do it according to the rules. So the parliamentarians that we had there were like, well, the meeting is not actually adjourned. They didn't even proceed properly for this meeting to even have been adjourned. And so we just all like hung around and waited for them all to leave. And then we were like, all right, we're re-adjourning in the parking lot because we never officially adjourned and we still had a quorum. So we adjourned again, re-adjourned in the parking lot with our quorum and voted in the slate of officers, which was Luke Harshaw as the chair, myself as the vice chair, and then, secretary and treasurer and all that. And then, it was pretty much over. It was easy. easy deal. We were really excited. And so then after that, Luke Harshaw, who was the chairman, he got a job with the Koch brothers, and a political firm, and kind of ghosted everybody. We couldn't get a hold of him. Everybody on the leadership team was messaging him, emailing him, calling him, and he just stopped responding. And so that lasted until about February of this past year, or no, before Christmas. I was like, well, so about a year ago, I was like, well, if he's not going to do anything, then according to the bylaws, I can just assume the chair for dereliction of duty, because he's not done anything. He's missed all our meetings that we're supposed to have had. And so I just called an executive board meeting and assumed the chair. And then after that, went about trying to reestablish the charter, because he'd let everything fall into complete disarray. Nothing had been filed. He hadn't paid fees. He hadn't held meetings that were supposed to be held. And so in the midst of me trying to get information to submit our charter update, no one got back with me. So I was contacting the vice chair, Shane Jemison. I was contacting Luke Harshaw. I was contacting nationals, and no responses for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Okay. It's getting one of the reasons for the young and the restless reference is because this is very soap opera-ish. There's a lot of intricate relations, and so it's very, very difficult to keep up with everything. So I'm going to try to stay high up. Now, I have to ask, how is it that the person that was derelict in their duty, how is it that the group was so inaccurate in picking their leader? They picked a bad leader. Why did that happen?
We did. No, we did. I think it's easy because here's the thing. In Oklahoma, and this is the 10,000 foot view. So in Oklahoma, we do not have a Democrat problem. The House is a majority Democrat. The Senate is a majority, we have a Republican-controlled House, Republican-controlled Senate, Republican governor, lieutenant governor. Most of our sheriffs are Republican. Everybody's Republican, right? So we cannot blame our issues on Democrats. It doesn't make sense. So the issues are the rhinos within the Republican Party who are taking the principles that the Republican Party is supposed to stand on and pushing them to the side, and just completely taking over all of that for leftist, Marxist agendas, but it's all cloaked in conservatism. And so it's very easy for rhinos to say all the right things, to have all the right points that they can make, and it's easy to fall for it because
all right. So but easy answer is, and what's the guy's name that ditched you guys?
Luke Harshaw.
Okay, so Luke got elected. It was easy for him to get, and whether he did it on purpose for nefarious reasons or for whatever it was, he was the wrong guy, and he ended up just being a rhino. He didn't really show up to do the job. Okay, so so that's the 2019. So really there was a. I mean, this is almost like not my president routine. There was a group of people who thought they were done with the meeting. They went home. You guys carried on the meeting without them knowing. Apparently, they didn't have a parliamentarian. Is that their problem?
Oh, no, they had one. They just were disregarding all the rules. And they were getting really frustrated that we would point out, you can't do that. And then they would like call for a voice vote. And say the ayes, which were our side, the ayes would have it very, very clearly. Like it was very clear. The ayes are much louder than the nays. The nays are like very small. And they would say, nays have it. And we were like, no, they don't.
We can see that game. So, and I understand now, isn't there jurisdictional authority for who gets to call the referee shots on the parliamentarian rules?
You know, that's a good question. And this, to be honest, this was the first time any of us had been involved in the Young Republicans. we were all very new to the process, but there were a few individuals there who knew the parliamentary rules, and I don't know who was acting as their parliamentarian, but he was clearly, just on their side, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it seems to me, I mean, I'm just as a bystander, it seems to me they didn't have somebody paying attention to that area of the rules, which, I mean, okay, so that's basically the 2019 thing, which when you guys finished your parking lot meeting, the first thing that happened that made it tenuous was that the original group before you guys showed up didn't agree with whatever you decided in the parking lot. Does that sound fair? And then, okay, and then the guy you chose to lead your parking lot meeting, man, he really ditched you guys.
Yeah,
so
he did.
So what else? So this is so what is anything else with the 20? I'm trying to get past the 2019 parking lot, but I can see
it was a mess.
Yeah, and it led to what becomes more similar mess again.
Right.
Okay, so let's move. Unless you got something else to add to December to the 2019 parking lot thing, we'll move to December 2.
The only thing is, in our parking lot convention, Shane Jemison was elected national committee man to the YRs. So that's what kind of tied him into the YRs throughout the rest of this saga, was that we elected him national committee man. So that's an important point to remember.
Oh, that's 2 strikes for you guys picking winners. Okay,
because it was, and that's no good on us.
If you don't like Shane Jemison, that's twice now. So I do have a question about young Republicans, and apparently, was your group was the state Young Republicans?
Yes.
Correct. And you voted. What is the difference between the national, the state, and the federated, and how is it associated with the GOP?
So the National Federation of Young Republicans is like the RNC is for the GOP. So there's the national group, and then under that are charters in each state. That would be like the Oklahoma State Young Republicans, Kansas Young Republicans, Texas Young Republicans. So each state can choose to file a charter underneath the umbrella of the National YR Federation. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so why is there seems to be confusion as I reviewed the video about who was in what group, national, state, and then there was some question about federated.
Yes, and I have asked multiple people about like federations versus charters versus clubs, and it's all pretty unclear. And I know the bylaws that the Oklahoma Charter of Young Republicans had whenever I assumed the chairship were embarrassment, frankly, not clear at all. And so there's not a lot of clarity in language or in procedure on how things are supposed to work out. And then as we're related to the GOP, the GOP can choose to have us come under them as an auxiliary, but there's no direct authority that the GOP has. It's not a direct link at all.
It's just gotcha. But they can call on you if they like to use that. Okay. And so then you said you voted Shane Jemison as what? And the 2019
in the parking lot. Yes, in 2019 he was as national committee man of the YRs.
Okay, national committee man of the
Oklahoma State YRs.
And so he is your ambassador to the federal nationals, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and you are unhappy with Shane Jemison's representation of the Young Republicans to the national group because of why?
So, what my beef with Shane Jemison is this. So fast forward to see if I can get my dates right. What year are we in? 2021? So fast forward to
You're asking me? Okay.
yeah, fast forward to January of 2021, this past January.
Okay.
And before Christmas, at the end of 2020, I had decided about a year has elapsed. Nothing, Luke Harshaw hasn't done anything, so I'm going to assume the chair. And so I went about, making the moves and the necessary adjustments to do that. And this whole time, I was trying to get in touch with Shane Jemison, who was our national committee man. And by this time, he was the vice chair of the state GOP. And so I'm thinking he's going to have some influence. He'll have some ways to get connected to people to help me move this process along. And then at that point, John Bennett assigns Shane Jemison with the task of helping me reestablish our YR charter in Oklahoma because it had fallen into disarray under Luke's negligence of duty. So John Bennett assigned Shane Jemison with the task of helping me. I have one phone call with Shane Jemison in which he tells me that I should wait a year to refile our charter. And in the meantime, build my ground game, network, get people involved. And I expressed clearly to him that I already had like 3 counties wanting to start clubs and get organized and get active. And I was like, I don't really see the point in waiting for a year to file a charter when I already have like over 25 people across the state wanting to get involved and ready to network with people. And so why would I wait a year and lose momentum when I could just do it now? And so that's what I expressed to him. Well, then about 2 weeks later, our charter, so the charter that I was chair of, we were never able to attain any of the information to resubmit the forms that were needed to maintain that charter. I couldn't get a hold of any of the information. So you have to have like banking information. You have to have a list of members. You have to have a list of clubs. You have to pay certain fees. And I could not get any information or any contact from anybody to help me with any of that information. So our charter expired. And so I started the process of just filing a new charter. And in the meantime, Shane Jemison files a YR charter with Daniel Seitz from OKC, completely contrary to everything that John Bennett had directed him to do. And that is the reason that I'm calling on Shane Jemison to resign, because this isn't the first time he's undermined our state chair of the GOP. He is establishment to the core, and at every opportunity does things that go against the principles of our party. And so that was the moment where I thought, oh, Shane is not on our side, and he really shouldn't be the vice chair if he's not on our side.
Okay, so I see your rationale for asking for his resignation. Has Chairman John Bennett directly agreed with you personally?
So John Bennett he's been out of town for the past 2 weeks. I haven't been in touch with him lately. In a position to call on Shane Jemison's resignation. I know that he can't enjoy working with someone who goes against him at every opportunity. And so that was my conviction was, well, somebody's going to have to make some racket to get something moving for the sake of the party, for the sake of our chairman, to not have a vice chair that's completely contradictory to him. And so that was my motivation. Outside of John Bennett, outside of the GOP, I felt an obligation to call on the resignation of someone who is clearly a rhino in order to protect, the integrity of the party.
And John Bennett, though, directed Shane Jemison to do this thing, and we know that for a fact, and he's disregarding Bennett's order. And is Bennett upset with that? Do we know, or do we don't know that yet?
I had a phone call with John Bennett, and he expressed he was very upset because he said, I told him to work with you. And he clearly didn't. He went the opposite direction. So, yeah.
All right. We're going to put you back on the surface of the planet, and hang tight. We'll bring you right back in shortly, right after the break. Stay tuned. We're talking with Hannah Silk, the former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair. We'll be right back after the break. Portions of tonight's program have been pre-recorded.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. And another. 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 Could be the most expensive night of your life.
Check out verbalviking.com and find the Funds for Frank link. The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of State in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. Portions of tonight's program featuring the Verbal Viking, me, Tommy McKay. Find me at Tommy McKay on Facebook and catch me at Tommy McKay on Twitter. Email verbalviking@gmail.com. And remember, if you know a musician, if you are an artist or an entertainer, send me your information. Next year, we're going to be doing 3D Culture Wars is what we're going to be doing with arts, entertainment, and music. So send me that information. Let's see if we can reach, once again, Hannah Silk. Let's see. Hannah Silk, are you there?
I am here, sir.
There she is. Let's see if we can bring her in from the planet's surface. See what we've got there. And wow, look at that. Replayed Perfect. From last week. Perfect timing. All right, transporter's working well. All right,
I keep wanting to say thank you, Scotty.
I need more powder, Captain. So, yeah, we pushed through the 2019 parking lot convention. We're deep into the December 2nd, 2021, and the formal complaint against Shane Jemison. Tell me about the, there was some issues. I think there was some confusing terminology. One of the things that I thought was really glaring in the video was a misunderstanding of hostile takeover. There seemed to be some confusion that hostile takeover meant people were going to get hurt and that there was going to be, nobody was being hostile, someone said. Well, that literally is not what a hostile takeover is. And so can you clear that up for some of the members who think that here's one of the things I saw was that your group came in force. That's admittedly, right? You guys had a bunch of people, you showed up at a meeting, and no matter whose meeting, if it was a birthday party, anybody's party, if a lot of people suddenly showed up and that they didn't know were going to show up, you're immediately going to get some sort of, resistance. I think that's normal human behavior. When it gets into the voting and the bylaws and the group and stuff, the people that were already there suggested it was a hostile takeover, and it seemed like some of the people in your group thought that hostile takeover meant they were being hostile physically. Can you clear that up?
So I didn't know anything about this December 2nd interaction until people reached out to me and said, "Hey, did you watch this video?" And so I watched the video, and I was like, "Well, this is very similar. Like, I've experienced very similar things." And the issue is I'm continuing to dig into this a little bit because I can't quite get a clear picture because I wasn't there. I don't know the whole story, and I don't know the people involved. And so I'm still working. I want a clearer picture of what exactly happened, and I haven't really been able to attain it because from the video, they are very defensive. The people facilitating the meeting are very defensive, and it's just, what's interesting is that the Young Republicans group, we should be any group that you're facilitating, you should be excited to see that many young people showing up wanting to be involved. Like, unless you have some kind of a power trip that you don't want other people there, you should be thrilled that you have a massive crowd there that you didn't know was going to be there. That's literally what you want as a Young Republican meeting. And so that to begin with is like, why are you so off put by people being here? It's that's literally the point of having a Young Republicans meeting, is to get as many people there as you can. And so that's odd. There might have been some miscommunication. I'm not sure. And this is what I want to figure out, because they were told they could come vote on leadership. I've also been told that they had already filed their club with the slate of leadership. Hold it.
You used the word "they" like 3 times. I don't have any idea what we're talking about again. So they who was told they could vote. Start there.
Mm-hmm. So the individuals that showed up, the young conservative individuals that showed up wanting to get involved in the Tulsa Young Republicans. Okay. So they were told that they were going to come vote on leadership. The people facilitating the meeting and running for leadership had already filed a club with the state YRs that had been accepted. So the leadership had already been accepted. This is what I'm hearing, and this is what I want to unravel more, because I'm not really sure of the whole story. And so what is being communicated is that it was a miscommunication issue and that they couldn't have voted to begin with. But if you watch the video, the way they're communicating that is extremely defensive and extremely like, you're being hostile, you're trying to take over this meeting, when in reality, these people just wanted to come and get involved, and they were confused about how they could get involved and felt like they showed up when they were supposed to be able to vote on leadership. And why shouldn't they vote on leadership? And so that's what, regardless of whether or not there was a miscommunication issue, the way that the people facilitating the meeting were handling it makes me very suspicious that it was anything other than a power trip and a power grab, and that they didn't like that other people who they didn't know were there. So that's my observation of the meeting, from a secondhand source from the video. I wasn't there. I don't know the people involved, but I definitely want to unravel more of it, because it's just it felt so similar to what happened in 2019. The very similar feeling and verbiage from the people facilitating the meeting. And so that's what really caught my attention, was the similarities in that sense.
It seems as though they didn't, whatever happened in 2019 in the parking lot has yet to be recognized by anybody who was at the December 2nd thing besides the group that you brought.
Oh, absolutely. And then
okay.
They don't want it to be recognized. I mean, they don't want to talk about this, because they've ended up with the positions, and they've ended up with the charter. So the rest of us have been silenced. And so why would they want to talk about 2019? Why would they want to talk about December 2nd? They want to just let it fade and brush it under the rug.
Okay, so I do want to press into, there are some, so the 3D scrutiny where I politely press against some of your statements. So there are some presumptions in the concepts of it's what it should be. The idea that here's your idea of what the meeting should be. There's a lot of, assumptions and presumptions there.
Sure.
And I think so I was trying to say at the very beginning of the whole hostile takeover comment, I think that before you get to any nefarious, emotional power struggle, there's a natural human defense mechanism if you have a regular thing that goes on regularly, and then a big bunch of people show up. And
well, this wasn't regular though. This was them getting a club started. So this was initiating. This is an initial meeting of, hey, we're going to start a club in Tulsa.
Okay, and I've skipped over it was advertised, right? So I mean, you didn't skip over it in your presentation, but I haven't mentioned that. I mean, this wasn't like a private meeting. So what is the difference between this public meeting and membership?
that's a good question. You basically anyone is a member. You can be a member of the YRs if you're a voting Republican between the ages of 18 and 40. You can come to a convention and be counted if you file. Like contact the state leadership. You can be filed as an at-large delegate. Now, if there's a club within your county or your region, then you can be a member of the club rather than just an at-large young Republican. And
Okay.
it gets a little confusing, the differences.
No, that's the part I understood.
There you go.
That's the
There
one
you go.
part I understood. Because to be
So
a member, go ahead.
No, Tulsa was trying to start a club, which is awesome. So they're wanting to make a local organization underneath the umbrella of the state Young Republicans and get people involved. So when people showed up, they then want to act like they're being hostile and trying to take over the meeting, which is just bizarre in my opinion.
Hold it. So 2019, if they're trying to start up, then how does 2019 even connect? If it was already started, right?
Well, that was a state convention. 2019 was. Yes.
And this is a Tulsa.
This is Tulsa Young Republicans convention.
So it's a
municipal.
municipal.
I think it may have been Tulsa County. It was either, you know what, I haven't heard the detail on that. I don't know if it was a municipal or a county. It was probably a county. That would be my guess, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. All right. So in my observation, I think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was handled properly, but even if you advertise, like, I mean, I put on a comedy show one time with limited seating, and we had we had so many people call, we literally had to pay the guy to get out of it. I mean, he paid us to get out of the contract of doing it because we had too many people. So what I'm saying is sometimes the overwhelming response is not always, I mean, I'm stretching here to try to bring up some reasonable explanation for why normal people are immediately defensive when a large group of people that they don't know come over to talk about controlling what we're doing. I think that's normal. So I think it's incumbent upon the group arriving to be just as tolerant of negotiation as the people who are, maybe even more, because you may be frightening them on the way up. I'm just guessing.
I would like to agree with you, but if you're trying, so the young Republicans, like, our goal should be to contact every young Republican in our county, region, or state. So you should be expecting a large number of young Republicans if your goal is every young Republican.
I'm not trying to be unreasonable. You're right. If you're advertising to get, I'm just ferreting out every rock I can. If you can't,
no, I hear you.
If you're looking for people to show up to be young Republicans, you're like, boy, I sure hope we have a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so then I mean, I guess the only thing you could have done was says, hey, I'm bringing, an extra 20 people, so here we come, But, I mean,
sure.
It doesn't seem like you had any speaking relationship. You guys got ditched at the very top by two major rhinos. And the question here, I think, is, does Hannah Silk, as former Oklahoma Young Republican chair, can she get OKGOP Chairman John Bennett to get Jemison to move in this area? But really, does he have time to mess with this stuff?
Yeah, and that's what I want to be the one, if needed, I want to be the one to make as much of a ruckus as I can and get as much support as I can to out this rhino, because we can't have people who are compromising the principles of our party in office. And to have someone because John Bennett is the greatest chairman I think I've ever seen in my political career. He is a lionheart and extremely principled. And so to have someone so compromised serving as his vice chair, that has got to be no fun. And so I'm like, well, I'm willing to cause a ruckus and make a lot of noise and call on Shane Jemison to resign because
Okay.
this is ridiculous.
So I understand that this is closer to your area, and the ballistics have landed in your pond, so to speak. And so, not everybody is going to see this as being as great an offense by Jemison as
Sure.
you do. And they may not be so farsighted as to be able to see, this guy is showing signs of rhino. You guys are listening to the fine and well-spoken Hannah Silk, former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair, who is asking for the resignation, calling for OKGOP State Vice-Chair Shane Jemison's resignation for his dereliction of duty on the Young Republicans front. And I appreciate you showing up and allowing me to try to filter through what is a dramatic soap opera of events over the last couple of years. Tell them also, once again, where to find you, how to find out more about this information, and how to find out about the Young Republicans.
Yeah. Easiest way to find me is on Facebook, Hannah Silk. And then a lot of our political activism is through the Ekklesia of Oklahoma, which is Ekklesia. It's a weird word, Greek word. And those are the two best places to find me. And I'm going to be pressing this issue more because I can't back down from my convictions and my principles, and I want an Oklahoma that is principled, and I want godly leadership in place at every level. And that's my goal. And I'm willing to work with anyone who is willing to work within those bounds. Even the Daniel Seitz, who filed the charter with Shane Jemison, I think if he is willing to have a convention early in the spring, and this is what I've submitted to the national YRs and to the state GOP, if Daniel Seitz is willing to have a YR convention early in the spring of 2022, then we can work it out and have a legitimate convention and see who the people legitimately elect. I'm willing to give it a few months. That's fine. And so those are my principles. That's my admonishment from the heart. Is I want righteous, godly Republicans in every leadership position, because that's what's going to make our state great.
All right. This seems like, to me, an issue that falls below the, time spent by Chairman John Bennett. I understand the connection that you're making because
Sure.
I think there's a point to be made. Now, you have stated that Jemison has stepped out of line before. Besides this, can you give an example of that?
Yeah. So recently, the National RNC, put out a statement saying that the Republicans to embrace log cabin Republicans, which are the LGBTQP plus members.
Okay.
We needed to embrace them and bring them into the party. And Chairman John Bennett put out a letter saying absolutely not, and the people who are saying this in the RNC should resign, because that is not the principles of our party, which I support 100%. And Shane Jemison actually put out a statement saying the opposite. And so he falls in line with the RNC and the people who are calling for compromise and calling for working across the lines. And there have been other issues that I won't go into that haven't been enumerated to me in detail, but there's a lot of contention. And
the last example you just gave is an example of a guy who is, if the way it happened is the way you're describing it, he's stopped representing and started making his own decisions about what he thinks is right. He's making a quality issue that is really. He's supposed to, the representative is, I've heard people say, oh, it's a hard job. They got to go up there and decide. I'm like, no, you don't. Go up there and do what I tell you. Go up there and say what I say.
Exactly.
Represent me. So if he's up there and Bennett says one thing and he does another, he's fallen off the representation bandwagon and started doing his own gig. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this: there was enough. It seems like to me there is enough people interested. It's exciting. A lot of people, young Republicans, they want to be involved. They want to make rules. They want to have a club and get involved and create a movement. It seems like to me the best benefit for not only the Republican Party, which would ultimately benefit Chairman John Bennett, but for the young Republicans is to gather a consensus of who all wants to be in one group, so that you can. I mean, there's got to be there's the contention was floated to you guys apparently on December 2nd. Start your own group, right? And so why isn't there multiple? If there's a state, a county, and a national, why, how many charters? Why can't you start another one?
Well, there can only be one state charter, and the thing is, and this is where it does tie into the state GOP a little, because once the state recognizes that charter as an auxiliary of the GOP, the chairman has a seat on the executive committee of the GOP, and the YRs have votes at state conventions. So that's where it becomes an issue of, if it's controlled by establishment, if it's controlled by rhinos, then they can use that to sway. They can use that to sway things, not only in the YRs but in the GOP itself. And so that's a lot of my motivation too, is when it ties up the chain a little, then it becomes more of an issue.
So I mean, this is clearly a power struggle within the and you how do you differentiate between establishment and grassroots? How do you know the difference there?
It's interesting. I think a lot of it is, sometimes you don't know. I mean, we elected Luke Harshaw as chair, and that turned out to be not a good decision.
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy to discern the people who are just playing political games and the people who are legitimately there for principled reasons. I mean, look at John Bennett. You're with that guy for 2 seconds, and he is a principled individual who cares about Oklahoma, cares about the grassroots, and is just doing what he needs to do his part. You can tell politicians versus principled individuals pretty quickly. And sometimes you give them the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes they fail. And sometimes you give them the benefit of the doubt, and they end up proving you right, and they're great grassroots individuals. It is, and that's where it gets messy. Politics gets messy because you wanna trust people, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes that doesn't work.
So where is Hannah Silk's greatest leverage to? I mean, what is the greatest motivation for you to get Jemison to resign, which is like, good luck, and then, or is it to shore up the young Republicans group and focus the group? It's clearly splintered. I mean, how are you going to focus the young Republicans, and what's your greatest leverage to do that?
I think my main motivation is probably calling for the resignation of Shane Jemison, which I know is an uphill battle. I recognize that, but somebody has to start it. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But my conscience is clear.
Well, we've got just 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's tell them once again where to find you and the main couple of points you want to press down before we get out of here.
Yeah. So easiest to find me on Facebook, Hannah Silk, or the Ekklesia of Oklahoma Facebook group. It's where we do a lot of our political activism and grassroots work. And my main issues right now are Shane Jemison needs to resign as vice chair of the GOP. He needs to be replaced. And we need to have the YRs need to address what happened with the charter being filed with the nefarious intent by Shane Jemison and Daniel Seitz, and I think the honorable way to do it would be to have another convention in the spring of 2022, and I'd be more than happy to work with Daniel on that. So those are the things that are happening in the grassroots of Oklahoma, and it's kind of fun to get to be a part of the fight.
Well, that is fantastic. And once, we just get better and better guests around here, and you are one of them. Hannah Silk,
Thank
Admonishment from you bet, Admonishment from the Heart. Go check out her video that explains, has other vignettes of other people who are at the meeting. But Hannah Silk is standing up to defend those voices she feels like are being cut out of participation with the young Republicans. Hannah, we're going to send you back to the planet's surface. Thanks once again for being on the show. We want to have you back again next year. You bet. Thanks for being here. Talk to you next time.
Absolutely.
Hannah Silk, very good. Former Oklahoma Young Republican State Chair Hannah Silk. She's calling for the resignation of OKGOP State Chair Vice-Chair. State Vice-Chair, see, I was just practicing. State Vice-Chair Shane Jemison. That's an uphill battle. She's admitted that. I think I can see that there was a strong group of people with Hannah Silk, both in 2019 and in 2020, and that strong presence can provoke the feeling of they're going to take over and ruin all of our toys. And it's a normal process, I think, especially in these things where we care about politics so much, and we presume that the meeting is closed, and they presume the meeting is open, and or at least finished. And I'm not trying to recap the whole thing. I'm just saying there are normal human behaviors that I think happened on both the 2019 and 2020 issues that can easily be explained by normal negotiations of people in a power struggle and a hostile takeover. That's understandable, okay? What is not understandable is how it is that Republicans are so good at picking losers. We've got G.T. Bynum in Tulsa, Oklahoma, pretending to be a Republican when how does he even show that? All right, and then you've got Jemison, and you've got all the others that are mentioned all the way up the line, but we're going to figure it all out. We've got great folks like Hannah Silk, young and Republican, on the way up. So tune in again next week for the surprise show of the century. Nobody knows what's going to happen next week. We'll catch you guys once again to start closing out the 3D politics year. I really want to thank the bunker out there this year for supporting me and heading us all the way down the tracks here. We're headed in to next year. And don't forget, next week, the fundraiser for Frank Urbanek, Oklahoma City mayoral candidate. Tommy McKay, we'll see you next week.
Oh, that's right, kiddies. Oh, that was exciting and fun to watch. Usually I don't get to watch, but that was exciting. And I noticed they did not capitalize godly. The word godly was not capitalized in the auto-generated closed captioning. So I think that's an important point to make. But let's real quickly see, because it's just me and you right now. Let's make sure that we can go back here and remind you people that, look at this. You just go to the Funds for Frank auction event right there. Find everything on the Verbal Viking. Go to verbalviking.com and then find at the top of the page there, Funds for Frank. And then you're going to find the Funds for Frank eBay auction. There's some information about Frank, a lovely picture of his family and his lovely wife, Audra. And then you can click right here on the Urbanek banner and get a great description of the Sterling Silver Cold Dead Fingers Collection, Second Amendment Charm Rifle. It's a sterling silver custom cast made in the USA, approximately 11 grams total, with an 18-inch, 1.5 millimeter black leather cord, lobster clasp hanging it all together. You can see it right there. No solder. The little silver hand literally grabs the Western style rifle. The rifle is about 2.3, 2 3/4 inches long. And so go to the verbalviking.com
website. Click on the Funds for Frank auction event. This auction starts, and it will start on January 7th next year, next month. And it's going to be an eBay auction. We're going to show you where to find that. And guess what? January 17th, 2022, Frank Urbanek, right here on 3D Politics. We're going to catch you guys again next week for a best of. I'm cobbling together a best of a show that's going to be like the best of the best ofs. It's a crazy time. Thanks for being here, and thanks once again for Hannah Silk to replay tonight and Down with Big Tech, because they ripped it down. Hopefully, we'll see if this one flies on YouTube next week, kiddies. Thanks for being here.
Trust me.
verbalviking.com